Sorry, Pastor.
Okay. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, continuing our study of Bhagavad-Gita chapter 4, we're in verse 34 to the end of the chapter. So in the previous passage, we were hearing about how Karma Yoga, the practices of Karma Yoga fructify into knowledge. So I have a little diagram here if one considers like knowledge like a seed. And Karma Yoga practices are like the soil in the seed. And a particular element and practice that really transforms matter into spirit is sacrifice, yajna. That's what we're specifically hearing a lot about in last passage discussion. So Gyan is the seed of knowledge, and it fructifies in the soil of spiritual practice. Of course, in context of spiritual practices, Karma Yoga, and a particular element of practice that allows it to fructify is called as yajna. The last verse we discussed in the passage, Christian mentioned that the spiritual practice has two parts to it, the external part and the internal part. So the external part is not as important as the internal part. The external part is, in a sense, the culture that allows for the internal part to grow nicely. The internal part being the knowledge. So you need some practices, like some external practices, to give you kind of boundaries. And within those boundaries, then you're able to grow actually. Just like if you want to play some sport, I like ping pong, but there are other sports also that are nice. Then there are boundaries that makes the game fun, and then within those boundaries, you play. That is a crude example. So you need boundaries, and from that you're able to go. Like nowadays, people don't have boundaries for anything, so they never really get good at anything. And they think that is also the quality. They say, "I'm a master of many." What do they say? No, I'm a student of many things, master of nothing. Which basically means that I shouldn't learn from you. You don't really know anything. So, and their minds are allowed to can pull them here and there. So you give some boundaries there, the practices, external practices of Karma Yoga. And within that, knowledge is able to blossom and produce its fruits of enlightenment. So where does this seed come from? So that is verse 34. How does one get the seed of knowledge that allows them to turn their activities in this world, transform their activities in the world transform them into spiritual activities. Otherwise, now you're just materialistic. But then you can perform those same activities, but with a certain type of knowledge that allows you to transform those activities into something that's conducive for actual spiritual growth. So where do you get that seed so that transformation can take place? So that is verse 434. One gets to see from the wisdom teacher, the guru. So this is a famous verse. Krishna says, Tavidi pranipatena pariprashnana sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam ganinas tattva darshina. So he says one should tat vidi, try to understand that knowledge in three ways. Pranipatena pariprashnana sevaya. So pranipatena means you have to bow down. That's literally what it means. Pranipat means to bow down. So that's a very common practice in the East, one that we have a hard time with in the West usually. So when people come in the Hare Krishna temple and they see everyone offering obeisances to everyone, they're like, what's wrong with you people? When Prabhupada's disciples, Brahmananda, and they were brothers, Brahmananda and who was it, Guru Das? There were two brothers, Garga Muni. So Prabhupada told them when they were going to see their mother after becoming devotees, and Prabhupada said, go and offer obeisances to your mom when you see her. So they went back to their house and rang the doorbell. And then when their mom opened the door, they immediately hit the ground. She opened the door, she didn't see. And then she looked down and saw Brahmananda and Gargamuni were there. It's a little strange. But in the East, it's a common practice to demonstrate that that I'm surrendering myself to this knowledge. This knowledge is superior to me. Uh, that is also common practice in Eastern tradition, especially Vedic culture, that the teacher was given like a seat of esteem that was a little bit higher than the student, because the idea is that you are beneath that knowledge, that the knowledge is not simply to be used for my own purposes, but rather I myself am to be used in service of that knowledge. Normally in the material world, the way you look at knowledge is that how to use it for my own purposes. So you go to a library or something, you want to study something, so you can use it for figuring out how to exploit the material energy in a more effective way by making more money, or they have things about how to be more charismatic. Um, I I followed the YouTube channel like that one time. Charisma on command. I didn't think I needed any tips, but I just to see, maybe I could see what he's talking about. Maybe I could do something like this. So they have so many knowledge, and why are they going to that knowledge? So they can use that knowledge in their service. But in the East, they have a reverse way of thinking about knowledge, that I'm supposed to be used in the service of the knowledge. And so there should be something that's very practical in demonstrating that that's what you're coming for. Panipatina, bow down, that I'm coming for. It's a very, because you can even do this exercise. I've seen this exercise once done with Sachinanda Swami. I thought it was interesting. We can do it. It's kind of fun. He said, stick your chest out and cross your arms like that, and hold your head up a little high. And just observe what happens to the mind when you do that. It's really interesting. Now, hold your hands and and then hold your head down. Yeah, the mind's like, stop it, nigga. What you doing? No! You can feel it's very different impact on the mind. It's kind of extraordinary. It's that something so subtle as just doing this can change how the mind is experiencing reality. So in Vedic culture, you sit beneath the teacher and you sit close to the teacher. And this is all meant, the teachers, of course, representing the knowledge. So you're saying, I'm beneath this knowledge. I'm meant to be used in the service of this knowledge. And that simple act changes everything. It changes your experience. Therefore, sometimes I do this, not regularly, not usually, but when a speaker is giving class in the Vyasa, you sit on the chair above them. Then it creates obstacle in learning. I've been interested in learning cello, and I was looking at this one lady who's famous in the world she created like a new instrument called the Indian cello. She's sick. She's from the Netherlands. But when you play the cello, you sit in the chair. So she went to one famous guru, Hari Chor. It's like this famous flutist. Yeah, Hari Prasad Chora. So she went to become a student of him, and he was teaching her. He was sitting on the floor, and she was sitting on the chair playing the cello. And the first thing she did, adjustment the next day, is that she sat on the floor. She said, I could immediately sense that there was an obstacle in my ability to learn because I'm sitting above the knowledge. And so she started sitting on the cello, but the cello is like huge. It's a pretty big instrument. So she started modifying the cello in such a way that she could sit on the floor and play the cello very comfortably. And she tried different modifications. It took her several years, and she finally has like this perfect cello where she can sit on the floor and learn from her guru. I thought it was just like super instructive when I saw that video. I was like, wow, this is the meaning of pranipatina. You bow before the knowledge, not that you shall come and use the knowledge for your own purposes. So pariprashna means you should have questions. Pari means like, we get words in English language like perimeter. So it means like comprehensive questions about spiritual subject matter, how to develop spiritual life. There should be inquiry. Otherwise, you will be cheated. This is how many people are cheated. They have no questions. I have a little aphorism that I like to use. The evolution of inquiry precedes evolution of being. Insofar as the questions you ask determine the type of knowledge that you receive. And with that knowledge, you can transform yourself. So if you're only asking questions about, season 8 of Game of Thrones, that is also a question. But the sort of knowledge that affords you will not help you transform your life. So pariprashna means the serious questions about life, the existential ones. Why am I suffering? How to become free from that? etc. These sorts of questions. This is called pariprashna. Those are the questions you bring to the guru. And in a sense, if you don't have those sorts of questions, then there's no need for a guru. So everyone doesn't require a guru. Sometimes in our ISKCON family, like, you need a guru. Well, that's not true. Everyone doesn't need a guru, actually. Only people who have these sorts of questions need guru. Actually, in my second day of my 100-day challenge, that was my picture. Everyone doesn't need guru. Some people only care about Game of Thrones. They're satisfied with that level of inquiry. Or asking about the stock market. And Warren Buffett, what's his name? Yeah, Warren Buffett. So those questions are there also in the course of practical life. But if you don't have these questions, then you don't need a guru. So this is the meaning of pariprashna. Yeah? And then sevaya. Sevaya means to render some service. You have to serve the teacher also. Service is required for transformation. Otherwise, the tendency you'll switch modes. You bow down, you show that I am surrendered to the knowledge. You ask questions. And then after you get a certain knowledge, you run off and say, now I'll become the guru. There's a very common practice today, actually. So sevaya has to be there. There has to be service also. And you see in Eastern traditions in general, they used to test the students for these things. Prabhupada also writes that in the purport. They will see if you were like this. They test to make, what is your mentality? That's why you couldn't just go to Amazon.com and just read it. You had to get the knowledge from the teacher because there weren't books. And so they would test your, and I always get this example of the Karate Kid. And I mean, we grew up in you've seen the Karate Kid before? The next Karate Kid, that's called. You've seen the Karate Kid? And he or she, in both the movies, goes to learn karate from the sensei. The first thing he gives him is like a bucket with some water in it. It says, wash your car. And he says, go like this, wax on, wax off, and they're like a little frustrated, like, what the hell does this have to do with karate, Later on, they come to find out that it helps us but he wanted to test their surrender. Only after they surrendered, then he agrees to teach. And they have to do this wax on, wax off for like 2, 3, 4 weeks. They want to see the mentality. And there are many stories in the Vedic culture where they will test for 6 months, 1 year before they will begin teaching, just to see how much the student is dedicated. Otherwise, this fellow will come and cheat me. He'll come, he's getting some high knowledge. It's like, yeah, now I can go and start my own business, my own enterprise. And instead of representing the knowledge, he starts some other thing and he calls it his own name. Just like now, people go and do yoga teachers training or something like that. Then they start their own yoga studio and they call it after their own name. I used to wonder when I first, was getting yoga world, Forest Yoga, this yoga. They have so many different names out there. So I at first I thought it was just like different yoga systems, but no, they learn something a little, in 6 months or a year. The real serious ones maybe a year. And then they start their own thing, call it after themselves, and build something, and they don't really represent the tradition. So you go to a lot of these classes, they don't represent yoga like Yoga Patanjali, which have elements of Asana pride, but they don't represent that tradition. In fact, in some of the classes that I've been in, when they don't like to chant the mantras, usually in Ashtanga Yoga Vinyas, there's a set of mantras that you chant to the teacher, and Patanjali, who's considered an incarnation of Ananta Shesh. And sometimes they cut that out because it may be uncomfortable for the students or this or that. So they don't represent the teacher. So in this Vedic culture, they used to test, because this fellow will cheat. He will be a cheater, and he'll not get the knowledge. So that is also mentioned, Upadekshanti te jnanam. He will initiate into the knowledge, but you have to come bringing this currency. This is the currency. What is the currency? Pranipatena pariprashana sevaya. The bowing down, the inquiry, and the service. That's the currency. And if you don't have that currency, then you don't get the product. No seed of knowledge for you. I'm not giving it to you. You're a cheating fellow, duplicitous. So getting us Tattva Darshana, the knowing person who's the Tattva Darshana, he's the seer of truth. You should approach him with this currency. And that way you can get the seed of knowledge. So a very important verse, and kind of a foreign in terms of the culture that we have in the West. It's very different. So if you go to the teacher, what he will teach you and what you will get from him, so that is verse 35. Yajgantwa na punar moham evam yasasi pandava. So Yajganto, have you, knowing this, Avam, thus receiving knowledge from the Guru, Napunar Moham, you will never again have bewilderment, which is nice. Um, Anyone that has ever experienced bewilderment is not a very nice experience. I remember one time Julie said, "I love being bewildered." It was at because we were having some debate on one of the chapters in the Gita. We're talking about Krishna's like bewildering nature, and it was a very interesting conversation. It's like, yes, this is bewildered. I love being bewildered. But usually when you get bewildered, you get bewildered because of attachment to material things. It creates bewilderment. You can always think attachment to the object of sexes are, and what type of bewilderment that creates. When you're not attached and you're just like, no, this is the new program, the sliding program on the apps. But when you get attached to someone, then that's when the real fun begins. And the bewilderment starts to happen. It's a very painful experience actually to be bewildered. It is the same as lamentation or fear. It's just another. Here, Krishna is saying that if you know this, if you receive this knowledge from the teacher, there would not again be this bewilderment, because the bewilderment is a function of the mind. So you get this knowledge that you're not this body from the teacher, and you practice and you realize that you're not the body. Since bewilderment belongs to the mind, you will no longer be bewildered. You'll just be the witness of functions of the mind without bewilderment. This is also called dhira, a sober person. Yena bhutani yasheshani drakshashyatman yatomai. And you will also see that all the living entities are Atmans identified with different bodies. Just like, because actually this is an interesting point. Well, not so interesting, but that when you realize your own self, then you actually realize the nature of others. And you realize that they're not different from you. We only see difference because we're looking at the body only. So we think we take our pain seriously, but we don't take the pain of others seriously. For example, on Facebook, Facebook is one of those places where people are irresponsible to the highest degree in terms of how they use their language, right? So they will speak very harshly toward each other, and they say sorry. They'll say with all due respect. Anyone who starts anything off with that, with all due respect, then the disrespect is coming right after that.
No offense.
Yeah, but no offense. Or they say something really offensive and they end it with no offense. You like, boy. But if you realize how painful it is to hear something like that, then you understand the pain of that other person also if they hear something like that. So then you don't indulge in that. But because we identify with bodies, we see ourselves as separate from everyone else. But the idea here is that if you see yourself as Atman, you see that others are also Atman. They share that similar nature as your own. And therefore, what you wouldn't want to experience for your own self, you would not afflict upon others. You see that actually these are all just Atmans in different bodies. So this Atma has the body of a pig. This Atma has the body of a cockroach, which is not so nice to look at, but it's an Atman. And this Atman has the body of a Donald Trump. And he's also just Atman, nothing to get worked up over. Okay, he's a little evil right now. It's the Moses like that. That's also okay. Not okay, but there's also this happening. You see him as different from that body. And you also see, Atomai means you also see that these Atmans are existing in me, that they exist in God. Just like sometimes when you see Atmans bewildered by certain modes, which we identify as evil on the conventional plane, then we think they have no relationship with God. And we're happy to curse them to go to hell and all these things like that. But actually, they are also Krishnas. He's saying they are also in me. You can see that. That's actually, if you actually meet someone like that, it would be really frustrating. You like go to them with like you're having some beef with someone, and you really want them to take sides, and then they hear you out, of course, with compassionately and all that. But they also see, and then maybe this next guy who's your enemy, they come in, they also hear them out compassionately. You feel very upset about that. I just told you about this fool, how you also, because they can see that they are also Atman, suffering with another set of modes, and they're also resting in Krishna. They also have that relationship with God, Paramatma. So this is the knowledge you get from the Guru: freedom from bewilderment, realization of your own self and others through that realization, and also realization of the resting place of all beings in the Supreme Lord. So then Krishna glorifies this knowledge in 3 verses. This is verse 36 and 37. 38 also. I'll just read the English here. If you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners. Generally, a person who has this knowledge is not a sinful person, but they're saying even if. That's just like for how you say effect. Even if this knowledge is so great, once you're situated in this knowledge, which is like a boat, sarvam jnana plave naiva, it is like a boat, then you'll be able to cross over the ocean of all miseries. And the ocean of miseries is what? The mind. The ocean of misery is the mind. It's small space in here, but it's like an ocean, creating sometimes the waves of happiness and sometimes the waves of distress. Most of the time, waves of distress are coming, but you get a little bliss. Get some cookie dough. What was it? Cookie butter. Get a little cookie butter. You're like, yeah, life is good. And then 5 minutes later, something else, someone looks at you funny. You like disturbed, for the whole Bhagavad-Gita class. That's how the waves are just coming. So this mind is like an ocean of grief, really, because grief is situated in the mind only. But once you have this knowledge, it's like a boat. You cross over that ocean very simply, very easily. Verse 37 is also a glorification of this knowledge. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Yes, so it burns reactions to all sinful activities. So the soul is suffering due to karmic reactions. Right? So they're saying here that by the fire of knowledge, those karmic reactions become burned up. And we talked about this a little bit. All your karma cannot be burned up entirely, because then your body would just drop dead. Right? The body is also the result of karma. So your family members are also a result of karma. So if you got realized and all your karma got destroyed, then your family members start dropping dead. That'd be messed up. Your mom is like at the store buying some groceries, so she's like, after you get enlightenment, then they're really discouraged. You don't go for the enlightenment. We ain't ready. So all your karma doesn't get destroyed, but your identification with the world of matter is destroyed. And so there can be no question of being identified with good or bad situation. This is one meaning. But it also means karma that is yet to fructify. So you have the karma that is fructifying now, that's called as parabdha karma. And there's karma that is to fructify in the future, that's called aparabdha karma. So here it's saying all that aparabdha karma will become destroyed with the flower of enlightenment blossoms. So then Krishna glorifies his knowledge. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. This is verse 38. So in this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. I don't know who Prabhupada is. It's posted. It's interesting how there's nothing as pure and sublime as this transcendental knowledge, but no one is interested in these things. So we usually like to select this in this because this is like pure diamonds. And who goes for diamonds? Only a few people go for the diamonds. I always find it interesting how we can spend lots of money for foolish things in the material world. We all have our foolish things that we don't mind spending a little money on, or a lot of money on. I remember hearing the Michael Jackson tickets. When we were going out, Michael Jackson was like hot stuff. He was like the king of pop for like 30, 40 years. Now you're the king of pop for like a week.
Exactly.
But yeah, but he was the king of pop for like a long time. And his tickets would be very expensive to go to the show. And people sometimes you would see like long lines to get the tickets. So it's long lines around the corner, In Chicago also, it'd be super cold outside. Even for this iPhone, also this happens. The new iPhone is coming out. Long line is coming. Sometimes you're out there for weeks. Yes. It's incredible. And then they'll spend like thousands of dollars on a phone that has no new features to it. It's just it's got a different name, iPhone X. Gotta get it. And then you go outside, and it's like Bhagavad-Gita. The most we have to like beg you, please just give a dollar, give anything. No. Such is our insanity. As the saying goes, you can. We could probably give a vegetarian version of this, but you can give a man a fish and he eats for one day. And if you teach a man to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. So that means that knowledge is really priceless and valuable. And yet it is not honored in an environment where there's a lot of ignorance. Only that knowledge which can be exploited for my own purposes is honored. But the spiritual knowledge which you have to actually submit to, that knowledge is not honored. People don't want to submit. Tat swayam yoga sanksiddha kalinatmani vindati. This knowledge, this realization, this flower of enlightenment, yoga sanksiddha. The word sanksiddha means complete perfection of yoga. This karma yoga, kalina atmani vindati. Its perfection will flower over time. Kalina means in due time it flowers. Tat swayam, within your own self. It is actually the intrinsic knowledge of the self that is not connected to the material world. So that knowledge will, in due course of time, it will fructify. Atmani vindati, and then you will enjoy within yourself. That is the greatest opulence. We were talking about this before we came downstairs. Self-satisfaction, where your satisfaction is not derived from external things. And the material world is external to the self. The mind is external to the self. The body is external to the self. So much most of our life is spent just trying to get that mind and be happy. That is also external to the self. And the mind is like a spoiled child that never is happy. Maybe we were those spoiled children, but we've seen them. And we know, man, if I get a kid like that, boy, my belt coming off so fast. Like spoiled child, you give him this. No! Give him that. No, of course, I didn't have any opportunity to be spoiled because that was the danger zone. You won't get any spoiled, man. You was moving into the danger zone. But it's like the mind is like the spoiled child. No matter what you do for it, never seems to be settled. And one doesn't experience self-satisfaction. That's because you're trying to derive satisfaction from something external to yourself. But the self is actually self-sufficient, self-satisfied. And we surrender that satisfaction to the material energy by identifying with the mind, identifying with the body. We surrender that opulence of satisfaction, like giving your gold to a fool. And you suffer. One suffers in that way. But Atmani Vindati, you will enjoy this knowledge within yourself. That means you become self-realized, you experience self-satisfaction. So when will it happen? In time. Huh? Yeah, that's not mentioned. So that's another reason why people have a hard time. When, especially in the age of Instagram and instant coffee and instant noodles and we want instant everything. So when it happened? And devotees were so vague about it. We'll give like a big 20-minute answer. You're just waiting for, but he didn't say when yet. You're just waiting for it. Then after the 20 minutes, does that answer your question? And you like, it's like 100 people around looking at you like, you better say yes. This is class get over. So you're like, yes, Prabhuji. It's fake. Yeah, that is not mentioned. But there are certain things required for this knowledge to manifest. So that is mentioned in verse 39. It manifests in time. And there are elements that require, aside from the yagya we've heard earlier, passages. So verse 39, this is a very nice verse. I like this verse a lot. Shraddhava labate jnanam tatpara samyatindriya. Krishna mentions three things here for it to manifest. First of all, Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. And faith means basically faith means the sustained effort by any behind the sustained conviction behind one's activities, right? You need conviction in order to continue doing something, even when it's failing. Right? Just like now, people in the material world, they have faith that the material world will give them happiness. I'm thinking specifically the partnership, that this is the source of happiness. Probably everyone in this room has that faith for sure. And even though it is not working out, dating one person after another, one relationship, and then not working out, still that faith is there that I can get happiness there. So why that sustained effort is there? Because you have that faith that my happiness is in that thing. So faith ends up basically on a practical level. Faith means to sustain effort, the sustained conviction behind any effort. That no matter how much it is failing, you continue to go pursue it. So that is required. Also for this is required for getting this spiritual knowledge. Tapara basically means dedication. And Prabhupada's translation here is one is very much attached to the practice. Commitment to the practice. Samya tindriyaha, and control your senses. So that is a very hard part because the senses are always pulling us away from our highest ideals. You have some high noble ideal. You can think of the high noble ideal you have, even if it's not that high in the estimation of spiritual literature, but it's high in your mind. Just think of it. And what is a big obstacle in pursuing that high ideal, noble ideal? Senses. They're always pulling you away from that towards some lower thing. So that has to get under control. With these three things, Gyanam Ladhva, you will attain this Gyan. And thereafter that, Param Shantem Achena Adigachati. Thereafter, you will attain very quickly the supreme peace. This is another phrase for liberation. So verse 40, who doesn't attain this thing then? So we might follow some of these categories here. Krishna mentions three persons here. Agya Ashadadhanascha. Sanshayatva Vinashati. Three persons. Agya means just an ignorant person. Ignorant person means like a beast. Just like an animal, just running around enjoying his senses. No consciousness, no awareness of higher anything. Like anyone in New York or so mostly falls in this category. They don't have any spiritual knowledge. They just chase after the senses. They call it agya, like beasts, like animals, basically. But it's not meant to be, well, maybe a little bit, but disparaging, like a judgment. It's just more like a statement of fact. Just like animals running around, for two senses, tongue and genitals, basically. Therefore, in New York, so many restaurants. It's tongue. And then the, Two birds, one stone. Sometimes people are so unscrupulous, they literally two birds in one stone. In the same eating establishment, they will do something in the bathroom. This is going, especially in New York, this is quite common practice. For these two senses, the whole world is moving. Then they have some eating stores and then the fashion store. But why there's clothing stores there? So you can look nice for eating and for eating. For eating. No, for attracting. There's this instruction by Lord Chaitanya to Raghunath Das Goswami. He says, don't speak nonsense and don't hear nonsense. Don't eat palatable foods and don't dress nicely. Now, these are instructions from renunciates, but they're instructive. Srila Bhattacharya gives nice commentary. He says, when you speak nonsense, you do harm to others. And when you hear nonsense, you do harm to yourself. And when you eat palatable foodstuffs, you do harm to yourself. And when you dress nicely, you do harm to others. So I was always like, what? So then he explains, he said, what is the purpose of dressing nicely? So that you can turn people's minds away from Hari Bhajan, which means the worship of God, and make them bid it farewell. I always thought that language was so funny. So you dress real nicely, you do all this and look attractive, and then their mind turns toward you. They say, bye, Hari Bhajan. And put down that bead bag, take off that tilak, take off that dhoti, and get in trouble. Make them bid it farewell. So for this reason, this fashion is considered sort of violence to others, which is, of course, this is again instructions for the renunciates. But I think in the lusty world that we live in now, I think we could easily see how it is kind of like a type of violence, especially when you're trying to be a little self-control. You don't realize that it's violence when you're not trying to be self-control. You feel like this is great, but when you're trying to like rise up and be a little bit better in terms of just your own spiritual practices and your own like dignity, that time you realize how it's so much of a violence.
And then art, also violence, music.
Yeah.
Violence,
Oh yeah.
violence.
Yeah. A lot of these things become
Everything's
violence. Everything
And
nowadays.
art is more powerful than fashion sometimes.
Huh?
Music is more powerful.
Oh
than
yes, music is violence today, especially that rap. You know, this one guy when we go to play ping pong, he rides around this bike with this loud as boombox, playing this horrible music, but he feels that it is a public service. You know, it's absolutely horrible. It's very loud, very obnoxious, very imposing. But he feels that it's a public service. He runs around, and it really irritates me. But he's like, "Hey, what's up, brother?" I'm just like. So yes, the world today is extremely violent. Actually, it's of course reflecting in the words that we hear in the music and what we see in the TV shows and the movies and the video games and the pornography that is so much of an addiction for many people today. You can see it's becoming more and more violent, but it becomes as subtle as even this subtlety, just you dressing nicely. That also becomes a type of violence. Of course, again, these are instructions for the Renaissance, just interesting. And like I said, you kind of realize that when you're trying to become self-control, and then you see something, you're just like, oh my God. Before you were like, yeah. Nice, you see it all the time. That's where this world today is not really, it's really difficult for someone who's trying to live a dignified life. If you're not trying to live a dignified life, it's not so difficult. But if you're trying to live a dignified life, it's pretty challenging. So that's the agya part. Ashraddha means a person who has knowledge, but he has no faith in it. And like an academic, he may study Bhagavad-Gita and all these things, Vedanta, but he has no faith in it. So they also don't manifest this knowledge. And Sankshayatma means the doubter, someone who has doubt. So Samshayata Vinashati. Vinashati means destroyed. Of these three persons, Nayam Loka Asti Napuro Nasu Kansanshayatmaha. Of all these people, Krishna criticizes the doubter. He says, for the doubter, there is no happiness in this world or in the next. Because at least the ignorant person enjoys in this world, isn't it? That is the benefit of being ignorant. As they say, ignorance is bliss. There's truth to that. There's a reason that becomes a cliche. So the ignorant person, and the faithless person, he also is enjoying life. He just does this is just like how you say, entertainment. Studying this and being able to quote this, and he can show he has some sophisticated. But the doubter, he believes in it, and he wants to also live by it, but he doesn't believe that he can actually achieve the goal of this thing. It's too lofty. He gets full of so much doubt. So he suffers. And that is our sadhakas, devotees. We suffer a lot because we also have faith in the material energy, and we also have faith in the spiritual thing. And it's like always this tension there, you know. And then there's a doubt that makes a tension. You start swinging more towards the material energy because you have doubt. I can't really do this. I can't achieve it. It's too high. So he said, for that doubt, there's no happiness in this world or next. So then he concludes the chapter. I'll just read the last two verses here. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his action, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reactions of work. O conqueror of riches. It's interesting to use the word Dhananjaya, O conqueror of riches. You've conquered riches in this world, but now you conquer this wealth of gaining your self-satisfaction, your optimism, independence. You get that wealth back. Yoga sannyasa karmanam, one who gives up all activities through karma yoga, that's me here. Jnana sanchana sanchaya, and all his doubts have been cut to pieces by Gyan. That means by this enlightenment, by the experience of it. Atmavatam, he becomes realized such a person is not bound by karma. And the last verse, Tasma, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Yes. Armed with yoga, not karma yoga in this context, O Bharata, stand and fight. So you're having some doubts, Arjuna. Again, a sambhutam that is born of ignorance. So jnana asina atmanam. This should be destroyed by the sword of this knowledge. Having destroyed that, you stand up and fight. Do karma, it means do karma yoga, and you stand up and fight. So nice section. I like this section of the Gita. Any question before y'all run off? We have questionnaire. So we put like 5 minutes together. Just on the last part. We haven't. I don't think we've worked on any part of it yet. But you can do the last part together for 5 minutes. It should be more or less easy. Just to do a little recap, and then we'll close out the class. All right, online persons. I can share the questions here if you like. Just from today's discussion, that section. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Where's the chat box, yo? Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Okay. Pop out chat. No, that's crazy. All right, I'm trying to post the questions here. You can look at them. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Dude, what happened to Dude, sorry, online. I don't know what happened to the freaking chat box. I posted a question and it disappeared. Maybe let's see what happens there. I don't even know if I could see this.
Nature of the knowledge is understanding as being
You realize yourself.
Yeah, it's being self-realized.
And then you understand others.
That you see the eternal in others. Those are proof by your partner worship out. See all the things as the supreme.
I will never fall again. You become liberated. You're not bewildered.
You're not bewildered.
I like what you said. Because yourself sustained.
Yeah, because you're realized in yourself.
Exactly. By serving the world, keep using opportunity to understand the beyond the mind and senses.
Yeah.
Self-sustained. And that's what bewilderment does.
Exactly. So bewilderment lives in us. So we're no longer being sustained by the mind.
Nice. I don't even know if I can see this.
What's
this
the power of knowledge is in yourself. You can cross over the ocean of misery.
You guys answered them quickly, huh?
And you
Very
burn
much.
passions or reactions of material activities. Just that you're able to cross over the ocean
Different
of misery,
types of?
and you burn the reactions.
Really?
We need faith.
Oh, yeah. So
we
the
need
parabda
determination,
karma
and we need what was the
and
other?
aparabda karma. So the word parabda karma means the karma you're experiencing now in this
Dedication,
life.
conviction, and
Your body, your
faithful,
qualities, your
and
mind,
subdue
the
others.
inevitable events that will take place in your life. This is called as
Yes.
parabda karma.
No doubt it's faith.
And this aparabda karma means karma you experience in the future.
And non-fructification
So-
is doubt, ignorance, and faithlessness.
This big storehouse of things that you will experience in the future if you don't get out of Maya. So it's saying by that in this knowledge you can destroy that house, that storehouse. The karma you already have manifested that will be there, but that storehouse will be destroyed. And after that you can get out of the material world. Okay, any questions? Or if not question, you can two people can share something. comment or
You could give a man paneer and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to milk a cow, he'll eat for a day. You said you wanted a vegetarian version.
Yeah. So what was the point that was being made when that analogy was given?
Transcendental knowledge.
You have to submit.
Yeah, transcendental knowledge is good beyond this life. Serve beyond this life.
You remember? That's not quite the point. Speculate, it's all right. Good try though.
Because the knowledge helps us to realize ourselves. Knowledge is the most important thing.
Yes, that was the point.
Especially the transcendental knowledge.
Yes, that was
Right?
the point.
If you know about this, inquire about the stock market.
Yes.
It's very fragile, it's gonna fall at one point. We're gonna die, right? But transcendental knowledge will carry us into the eternal, sustained life, aloof from the mind and senses.
Yes, this is the point that there's nothing as sublime and pure as this knowledge. So why are we sacrificing for lower things and not for this? All right, someone else? Sure. That's it. I always catch you.
How do we get this knowledge into the material world? Because here we have gained this knowledge, but how do we get it into the visual world? Where it's not fragile.
That is what we've been studying. Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4. So you can go back and read 247 through 53. That's where Krishna first starts. He elaborates in Chapter 3. You have to practice it. Find out all the elements of practice, equanimity of mind, all that we've been discussing. Then you have to practice. Of course, on a simple level, we can just get the Bhakti Esther chant Hare Krishna and increase that. That is very good. Keep coming to the Bhagavad-Gita class. Every day will clear up in due course of time. Tat Swayam Yoga Samsiddha Kalinatmani Vindati. Right? In due course of time, it clears up. That's what it said. Kalina Atmani Vindati. In due course of time, it will clear up. And Tat Swayam. All of a sudden, some understanding is coming. One other person, share 1 point. 1 point, sir? Yes. Not. I see you taking so many, or maybe you instant messaging on your friends or something.
I'll take those.
Okay.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Quick
you
question.
can. Yes.
You mentioned the results of karma is still remaining, but I've always thought the results of our karma is it's our attachment. What if transcendental person becomes detached from the results of his karma, present karma? Can we consider that he still have his the present karma, or when he becomes detached from his karma, he doesn't have it anymore because he doesn't have it in his mind, in his life?
Yeah, we say that's actually a little bit of a complex and subtle subject matter. But basically, we do say that bhakti destroys all types of karma. It destroys aparabdha karma and also destroys parabdha karma. So then the question comes, then why the body is remaining? This is also a result of the parabdha. So if it gets destroyed, then that's what I was saying. The body should just drop or immediately dissolve. Like you have the enlightened moment, and all of a sudden you see your hair. You just turn into pixie dust. So Mahadeva the Bhushan talks about this actually in the Vedanta Sutra and also in his commentary in the Bhagavad-Gita, that it is the Supreme Lord who sustains the body of the devotee so that the devotee can render service in this world. But he has considered that his parabdha karma is actually completely destroyed. In the context of chapter 4 Bhagavad-Gita, the parabdha karma is not destroyed by Gyan. Only the aparabdha karma is destroyed. So they're called as jiva muktas, and their parabdha karma is considered like the spinning of the fan after the fan has been unplugged. So then that life continues, and then when it stops, they can get liberation.
Can we also
after
say that our body belongs to Krishna now, and this is not us? So it's
Yeah,
God
that's
that
a-
we don't have karma that way.
You could say like that also. The idea is that
Or money, or job, or anything like this. He's
everything belongs to
rendering
Krishna.
to himself, right?
Yeah, you can say like this. Krishna takes everything, literally. All right. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hoodie. Hoodie, hoodie. Later, internet.